This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is the radio show designed to highlight the trends shaping the workplace, the workforce, and the marketplace around us. What I want you to hear on this show are ideas or comments from my guests that give you some insight into your own business, that give you an opportunity to do or be a little bit better at what it is you do by learning from the experience of the people who we curate and find and cultivate and get ready for this radio show. Now, before we get in today's topic, let me tell you about a little passion of mine that directly relates to our guest today. I can't remember where and when exactly I learned about WWOZ, but once I learned about it and once it hit my radar, I've had a hard time looking away. This radio station is playing in our house through our streaming services over our Sonos equipment nearly all the time. There are those of you who will know exactly what WWOZ is. For those of you that don't, WWOZ is based in New Orleans. It focuses on the music that has been created and cultivated and, I guess, changed over the years through that port city as well as the state in general. It's about New Orleans and Louisiana music. The DJs on the station are given carte blanche, and we'll learn more about this when the interview begins, to play whatever they want within the genre of their expertise. There is no corporate behemoth telling them what to play. Furthermore, these DJs are encouraged to be the personalities that they are. And there are some dynamic personalities here on this radio station of WWOZ. What you get with this station is something completely different than I've heard anywhere else in the nation. It may exist, but I've not heard of it. And you get to know and enjoy and adopt these radio personalities as well as learn a whole lot about music, which is really important to me, which is something that I really enjoy. Now, that would be fine and dandy, and everybody would say, okay, that's kind of interesting. Perhaps it's hard to find that in a music radio station these days. So it's fine and dandy, but why is this significant to What's Working with Cam Marston? Here's why. Last year, when Jazz Fest was canceled due to the pandemic, they came up with the idea of Jazz Festing in Place, which we'll talk about on this upcoming interview. Jazz Festing in Place was essentially going back into the archives and picking acts that had played at Jazz Fest in New Orleans and playing them on WWOZ and doing homage as best as they could to the live event that was Jazz Fest. The significance? 192 nations and principalities and countries and provinces or whatever it may be across the world tuned in to Jazz Festing in Place. Let me say that again. 192 different nations, principalities, etc. across the world listened in to be a part of this. Now, for me and you here in Mobile, that's the central time zone, and that's no problem. But you got to understand that there are people on the other side of planet Earth who are changing their schedule to participate in this thing. And when I heard them talk about this on WWOZ, I said, my goodness, one of the things that businesses really desire these days, most of them that I'm aware of, is almost a viral contagion of support from their customer base, is almost a frothy mouth support from the customer base. And any organization that gets 192 different places across the world listening in has got something going on. And perhaps I can get the general manager of the station onto the show and have her tell me, here's what we do that creates such an undying support. Now, they're not a commercial radio station. They're a public radio station, which means all their dollars are raised through fundraising. And it's people like you and me and these people from all over the world that are sending money to keep this station afloat. And it's a remarkable story full of remarkable people, remarkable personalities playing remarkable music. And what I want to learn is, what is it? What is the trigger? What is the recipe, the secret sauce that gives the people around the world such a passion for the station that on the other side of this planet, they will get up in the middle of the night to listen to the music being broadcast by WWOZ to take part in this event? Now, WWOZ has been a big part of my life and my family's life for a while. We love the station. In fact, I had my family in New Orleans a couple years ago, and I didn't tell them, but we were touring the French Quarter, and I intentionally walked us to WWOZ, where one of the DJs was waiting for me and brought me into the booth. I love it. And at night after grace at dinner, we say, and God bless WWOZ. It's a part of our culture around this house. I can't wait to hear what Beth Arroyo Utterback thinks the secret sauce is that creates such a passionate audience base, and perhaps there's something we can learn from this and apply to our own businesses. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be back right after this break.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Now offering the purchase of the Stella Artois Chalice, a beautiful stemmed glass with the Stella logo. The purchase of each Stella Artois chalice provides 5 years of clean water for someone in one of 13 developing countries around the world. Learn more at stellaartois.com. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
At Spring Hill Toyota, it's just that easy. From our 3-day exchange to free car washes, the benefits of the Spring Hill Advantage make the choice easy to see. We make it easy to own. Every vehicle comes with Toyota Care, plus our no-cost maintenance plan with free tire rotations and oil changes for 4 years. Get peace of mind with free roadside assistance 24/7. And don't forget, it's easy to buy your car 100% online. Visit SpringHillToyota.com today. It's just that easy.
I'm Eric Cromwell. The law firm of Cromwell & Associates can help guide your decisions regarding the life you've created with estate planning tools like wills and trusts. We've planned meetings with first-generation business owners and large multi-generational family groups. With locations in Mobile and Fairhope, we can assist you and your family through every stage of life. To learn more, call 251-605-9075 or find Cromwell & Associates on Facebook.
When you make the right decision, it feels good, like picking the perfect accent rug or choosing a good night's sleep over an all-night crime show binge. It feels really good to make the right insurance decision, too. I'm State Farm agent Allison Horner, and that's why I'm right here in Mobile to help you select the right protection at the right price. I'll make sure you understand your State Farm coverages so you'll know what to expect if the unexpected happens. With me as your State Farm agent, it's easy to make the right choice. You can come by, call, or click AllisonHorner.com. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. I'm on the line with Beth Arroyo Utterback. She's the general manager of the Mighty OZ, WWOZ in New Orleans. It's a public radio station. I'm not if that's the right way to describe it. I'll get Beth to tell us what it is, that has an extraordinary appeal across the world. Beth, thank you for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Cam.
So I am a big fan of the OZ. As I record this, as you and I are talking, I'm wearing my OZ ball cap that I got in the mail last week. I've been a donor to the station over and over. It's on the in my house nearly all the time. In fact, when my family's seated around the dinner table, at the end of the family blessing every night over dinner, we all pray God help bless the WWOZ. You're a big part of our world. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate that.
Tell us a little bit about the OZ. Tell me about WWOZ. Give the listeners a background of who you are, how you evolved, and then what you got going on these days.
Well, sure. WWOZ is a community and public station coming out of New Orleans, Louisiana. We just celebrated our 40th birthday, and our on-air hosts are strictly volunteers. We have a professional staff, a very small professional staff, but our show hosts are volunteers, and they play various genres from traditional jazz to contemporary jazz to blues to bounce. You name it. If there's some kind of an interesting music that has some kind of a connection to New Orleans, we're playing it. And the beautiful thing about it is that the management in no way tells the show hosts what songs to play. They completely craft their show from beginning to end. The only thing that we ask is that they stay within their genre. For instance, if they're on from 9 to 11 and that's a traditional jazz slot, then we ask them to stay within the traditional jazz slot.
Yeah.
And one of the most incredible things about WWOZ is that you know, because you're a listener, so many of our show hosts have been here 25, 30, 35. We even have some that have been here all 40 years for the station, and they're all completely volunteers. It's completely volunteer driven. So it's incredible.
There are people listening that are thinking, golly, if I could get somebody to volunteer for my church group, for my T-ball group, whatever it may be, and be there for 2 years, I'm a winner. You've had volunteers showing up for work for you, for some of them, for 40 consecutive years.
40 years, and it's not only actually for their show, because the show lasts 2 or 3 hours depending on the slot, but they have to actually have time to put together their show at their home. So many of them spend hours and hours figuring out what songs they want to share with people. And it's really not just about playing songs. It's about talking about the music and the artists and giving a reference point, a real reference point and touchstone to the listeners. So it's more than just playing songs.
I'm not aware of a station that does what you do. Maybe it's out there, but as I sit there during the day, and it goes from the jazz show in the morning to the traditional jazz show from 9 to 11 to, I think it's New Orleans music after that.
That's right.
You play so many different genres. Are there, and the way I read about it, this used to be fairly common on radio back in the day. I don't think you can find it anymore out there. Are there other stations out there that play multiple genres?
You know, I'm sure that there are a few, but we continue to get those kinds of comments that you're the only station that does what you do exactly the way that you do it. And it's been a formula for us that has been tried and true, and people just love it. They fall in love with the music. So many people who are music aficionados say, I have heard a song that's 60 years old for the very first time on WWOZ that I should have heard years ago. And they're constantly being entertained and surprised by new old music that our show hosts unearth and share with them.
I was that way not long ago. I heard a song, I can't remember the name, but it was in one of the evenings. I think it begins at 7 p.m., one of the 7 p.m. broadcasts, and I just sat up and I thought, I've never heard this before. And I picked up the phone and I called the DJ, and he answered. And he said, yeah, I love that one too. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We chatted for a moment. It's just really special what you got. And what I want to talk about is this extraordinary engagement that you have from the listeners. You have listeners who are complete advocates of what it is that you do. And with that, I want to move into this list that you sent me about the upcoming Jazz Festing in Place that you guys do, where there was 196 different nations and territories that listened last year. And they include places, folks, like, and I'm just going to pick some names here, Tunisia. Here's Azerbaijan. Here's Iceland. I don't think that's as surprising as is Bangladesh. What are you doing, Beth, that has turned your consumer into such an advocate that on the other side of the world, they want to know what you're playing?
You know, I think people have been fascinated a long, long time with the idea of New Orleans, whether they're from here or whether they've visited or whether they've only visited in their mind or whether they come to Jazz Fest. And there's just a real fascination, first of all, with New Orleans. And then from there, the music and the food and the culture of New Orleans. And the fact that they can find WWOZ on the internet in every far off place in the world that you can could possibly imagine. And somebody starts listening to it, and then they turn somebody else onto it, and then they have listening parties. And so when you're talking about people listening in those areas, that's not just one or two people. I mean, it's many, many people listening. And I think it has to do with first of all, the music. I think it has to do with the authenticity of the show hosts, because they're the real thing. And the fact that it's live and it's immediate. We're 365 days a year. During the pandemic, we do have some pre-taped shows, people from who have been taping their shows from home. But for the most part, our show hosts come in, and like you said, they pick up the phone when somebody from Israel calls or somebody from Italy calls. They pick up the phone and they actually talk to the show host. That's like kind of old time radio in a way, but in the truest sense, it's really it's really very special based on what's going on right now with so many canned pre-done kind of music services. And I think that there's a real immediacy and a real personal connection to radio that people don't have with television. And WWOZ, I think, is unique in that and has just captured really the hearts of people around the world and has captured the imagination of people around the world. We have a lot of fans in Japan, and we hear from them constantly. And, we're here in the French Quarter, right on the Mississippi River. And right now we aren't allowing visitors in because of the pandemic. But before all of that started, people from all over the world who came to New Orleans, would come to WWOZ just to take a tour of WWOZ and just to come look at our little 1,200 square foot studio and office here, just to see where all the music comes from. And they'd come through and they'd say, this is about what we thought it was going to look like. It's just a magical place.
It is a magical place, and it's a place that people just get behind. And I'm thinking about my listeners. My listeners out there are business owners, leaders, etc., who would love to develop such advocates out there that like you have. And the word I'm waiting, or perhaps you've said it and I miss it, that so many of the guests who have developed advocates say is authentic. We have this genuine authenticity. And I hear that in the DJs, who they really are. And they talk about their experiences, etc. It's an authenticity. Do you coach this? Do you teach this to your people? Or is it just something that's been born out of the culture of the station?
It's just born out of the culture of the station. We really don't have any kind of, formal like coaching or training for our show hosts. We pick them. We teach them, how to do the board, and we, talk to them about the station and the mission. But honestly, we have very, very few new slots ever open up because we have so many people that have been here for decades, and we have a healthy list of substitute hosts that are just waiting for the chance to get their very own show.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's like a constant influx of new people. I mean, the people that make up OZ have been an integral part of WWOZ now for decades. And, and many of them, this is their favorite place to be. And, one of the things I like to tell people is that, we have every kind of a show host as you can imagine. We have people that are waiters. We have people that are doctors, that are dentists, that are attorneys. And I'm friends with many of them on Facebook. And no matter what they do, the very first thing when you go to their Facebook page, the first thing that they identify themselves is that they're a show host on WWOZ.
No kidding.
So. No, they may be the chief of some kind of a medical group somewhere, but the first thing they say is I'm a show host at WWOZ. So I think that tells you about their dedication to the station. It's really a remarkable place.
It really is. It's something different, and the authenticity I think comes through, and the authenticity makes me think of my buddies Jamie Sandifer and Mark Salyers. They're with Sandifer Wealth, and the authenticity that they represent in helping you with your asset management and financial planning is something you will definitely see and feel as you come to their office. It's a very family feel with them. If you're a person that saves more than you spend, if you're a business owner who's sold your company and maybe had a bit of a windfall of money in that, and you think, gosh, I I didn't get to do a lot of what I wanted to do due to growing this business, and now you have a little bit of money, and Mike can do it. And one of the things you want to do is set up a future for the people around you. Give Jamie, give Mark a call. Sandifer Wealth Management, 340-1984, or sandiferwealth.com. Folks, I'm on the phone with Beth Arroyo Utterback. She's the general manager of WWOZ in New Orleans. I'm a big fan. It's an honor to be talking to her on the phone. When we come back, Beth, I want to talk about Jazz Festing in Place, what the idea was behind it, and what it's looking like for 2021.
Sounds great. Thank you.
You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing in downtown Mobile. We make drinkable, flavorful craft beer perfect for life on the Gulf Coast. So pick up one of our 6-packs before your next adventure, or stop by our tap room for a relaxing afternoon with friends. Follow us on social media for the latest beer releases and events, and ask for a Braided River at your favorite bars and restaurants. Thanks for your support. We look forward to sharing our beers with you.
This is Cam Marston, and I'm with Cajun Mike of E3 Termite and Pest Control. Cajun Mike, if a homeowner thinks they have termites, do you offer inspections? What about someone buying a new home? Can you come in and take a look and see if there are termites in their new home?
Yeah, basically what we would do on a home above and beyond anyone else is we actually do a thorough inspection. But above that, we will use infrared imaging that will allow us to see problems in the wall, and at times can tell us if there's anything going on.
That's fantastic, Cajun Mike. How can people find you?
They can find me at e3pest.com.
That's the letter E, the number 3, pest.com.
King Solomon wrote, "Without consultation, plans are frustrated, but with many counselors, they succeed." The law firm of Cromwell & Associates has the legal counsel that can help your business succeed with experience in LLCs, corporations, and tax. I'm Eric Cromwell. Our law firm has locations in Mobile and Fairhope. Call 251-605-9075 or search for Cromwell & Associates on Facebook. And let's discuss how we can help you.
We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm on the line with Beth Arroyo Utterback. She's the general manager of the Mighty OZ, WWOZ radio station out of New Orleans, Louisiana. It's a remarkably powerful, influential station, certainly for those of us that listen to it. Beth, I'm curious if before the break, we were talking a little bit about the DJs. I'm curious if the DJs, do they have to live in New Orleans to do that job? None of them phone it in. I guess with technology, they could phone it in, but they're all out of the studio, aren't they?
Right. They're all local. All of our on-air hosts are local.
Yeah. And it occurred to me before the break or during the break that I was just wondering about that. But let's talk about the upcoming Jazz Festing in Place. Jazz Fest has been canceled again this year due to COVID. But last year you rolled out the idea of Jazz Festing in Place and are going to do it again this year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we are from Thursday, April 22nd through Sunday, May 2nd. For both of those long weekends, Thursday through Sunday and then Thursday through Sunday again, we are inviting everyone in the world to Jazz Fest in Place with us at www.oz.org. And what we're going to offer is a Jazz Fest, and I call it the best from heaven and earth, because you can tune into Jazz Fest and hear people that you will never be able to go to another festival to see, like Dr. John and Alan Toussaint and all of the Neville brothers together, Fats Domino with Dave Bartholomew and the Meters. You'll also be able to hear Kermit Ruffins and the newer stars like Trombone Shorty and Tank and the Bangers, Amanda Shaw, Treme Brass Band. So we are basically doing a festival Thursday through Sunday and Thursday through Sunday, the same hours that Jazz Fest would be happening. This year too, Cam, we have something really exciting. We've uncovered through the Jazz and Heritage Foundation some rare recordings from 1970 from the first ever Jazz Fest.
Wow.
Which include performances from Mahalia Jackson, Pete Fountain, Al Hurt, and Duke Ellington, which is like which is just so amazing to all of us here that work at WWOZ, because we've all read and heard about the very first Jazz Fest. It was really just attended by a very, very small amount of people, and the fact that those were recorded and have been tucked away in an archive for all these years, for over 50 years, and we're going to be able to share those with our audience is really something special.
No kidding. That's great.
Yeah, so the idea of Jazz Fest in place it's really fun, if I could tell you about that.
Yeah.
My mom and dad, they grew up taking us to Jazz Fest as we were kids. We grew up here in New Orleans and Lakeview in the Gentilly area. And we all went to Jazz Fest. And then as my mom and dad got older, my mom started losing her vision. And it was not really practical or safe for her to actually try to attend Jazz Fest in person anymore. So this was in the early 90s. And just around that time, WWOZ started broadcasting live from Jazz Fest. So what my mom and dad set up in their Gentilly carport, Gentilly's a neighborhood in New Orleans. Yeah. They set up basically a mini Jazz Fest in their backyard under the carport. My dad put big speakers up where they would listen to WWOZ, and they would make red beans and rice and crawfish Monica, and then he would put the beer and soft drinks and waters in the outside refrigerator, and they put lawn chairs all over the lawn and under the carport, and all the family and their friends and their neighbors that weren't going to Jazz Fest that day would come over there, and then basically we would Jazz Fest in place at my mom and dad's house back in the early 90s. And that was a way that they could experience Jazz Fest. And my dad used to say, this is like Jazz Fest, only better because there's no line for the bathroom.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so when it became apparent last year that we weren't able, to have Jazz Fest because of the pandemic, we knew that we had these recordings, and we thought, well, let's just do our own festival. And the idea of Jazz Festing in Place really came from my mom and dad, Verna and Sid Arroyo, who are up in heaven, Jazz Festing in Place up there, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes.
That's great. So how many different acts will you have on Jazz Festing in Place? Have you got the cubes lined up? Are you even using the cubes?
Yes, we've got the cubes. You can look at WWOZ.org and go online, or you can look on our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and the cubes are there. We're constantly updating them. We have about 120 acts. Some of the acts are a half hour. Some of the acts maybe 15 or 20 minutes. It really just depends on the quality of the recordings that we get. And we do have the cubes on there, and you can you can go online and look at the cubes. Every day we're going to have like a second line kind of like in the middle of the day with various brass bands. We have the Treme Brass Band coming up, the Dirty Dozen Brass Band. We've got the Rebirth Brass Band. And so it's just it's really just almost like going to Jazz Fest, except that you can do it like from your front porch or your backyard or your air-conditioned living room or anywhere you are on your boat, wherever you want all over the world. And you can do it with your friends. And the other thing that we're asking people to do is to take pictures of themselves from their Jazz Fest outpost, no matter where they are, whether it's just you or if it's you and your family or you and your crew, the people that you like to hang out with. Take pictures of yourselves festing in place and send it to us. And we put those on our social media and we put them in our online scrapbook. And it's really just a fun way for everybody to kind of celebrate together, but still kind of staying apart so that, you're still kind of just hanging with your crew. It's really a lot of fun. And I hope people will join us and try it.
Well, I think one of the things we talked about prior to the last break was the authenticity. And what you're doing again is, hey, we can't do it like we used to do it. So let's do it this way. And let's just admit that this is all we got. And therefore, we're going to pull these archives, these treasures out, and we're going to play them. And everybody sit around and enjoy these types of things and send us these pictures. It's just very simple, but very genuine stuff. I'm curious will the DJs be a part of this? Those great personalities who I've grown to adore, will they be announcing the acts or interacting at any point?
Right, the on-air host, it runs pretty much like a regular festival. So there's very little talk in between, but the acts are going to be introduced by our various on-air hosts. So
Right.
yes, everybody's a part of it. The on-air hosts are part of it. The staff is part of it. But really, the real stars are the musicians and the musical sets. So it's like this is what we have. But when you're sitting in the backyard and you've got like a daiquiri or a glass of wine in your hand and you're listening to a fabulous set from Alan Toussaint in 2015, you're never going to be able to go to a jazz fest where you're going to be able to see Alan Toussaint play again. And so this is why I call this the best jazz fest from heaven and earth.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because we've got we've got some other wonderful sets too that are not necessarily connected directly to New Orleans, but are connected to Jazz Fest. For instance, we've got Carole King. We're adding a set with James Taylor, and sometimes we'll throw some sets in like that. Last year we had Bruce Springsteen. Once again this year, one of our most famous sets from last year was Ella Fitzgerald, where she was joined by Stevie Wonder from 1977.
I heard
and
that.
we're going to be we're going to be repeating that because people just really love that and went crazy over that. But then we've got the more New Orleans acts too, like Charmaine Neville and Ernie Cato and the Preservation Hall Jazz Band and Paul Sanchez, and so it's just a really great mix of people. And it's what I love to tell people is that this is very similar to if you were actually on the grounds of Jazz Fest, where you're walking, on the grounds of Jazz Fest and you pass the jazz tent and you might hear somebody out of the jazz tent, and then you pass the gospel tent and you might get a little taste of that, and then you might pass the Gentilly stage. So it's kind of almost like Jazz Fest, is that we've got every kind of music that you can imagine on here, and hopefully it's going to give the people a real taste of being at Jazz Fest until we can get together again and celebrate together again. I mean, the in-person is so much fun and so wonderful to be able to be part of that Jazz Fest community, people that love to get together and be at a festival. But until then, this is what's gonna have to do, and we're pretty darn proud of it.
I think it's great. And like I said, I'm a big advocate, and there's so much good music that you've captured there. I remember my first Jazz Fest experience, and I know you and I could go on and on about our Jazz Fest memories, but I remember working myself up, and this was as a Tulane student. I was much more interested in other things than New Orleans music. So I got a rude awakening as I worked myself up to the front of one of the stages, and I looked at the person next to me and I said, "This band is really good. Who are they?" And they looked at me like I was the biggest Luddite in the world. They said, "That's the Meters." And I went, "Oh, I'm going to remember them. I think they've got a future." Well, they were killing it at the time. They had a future. They were so very influential. And it's just, I remember sitting up on that stage, and I tell you, man, the Meters are on in my house, or at least one of the knockoff bands, the Meters, who am I thinking? Galactic, and many of those have been on my playlist ever since. But it's one of my first Jazz Fest memories of being blown away by the music that I was seeing there, thinking this is truly something special. When we get back
You're going to be excited to know, let me just mention this to you, is that on the very first night, we're going to wrap up the first night at 6:15 with a Meters performance from 1970.
Oh.
So that's really something that you're going to look forward to. And we also have Galactic on the schedule too. So yeah. I really hope people will go to the website and check out the cubes, and plan to cook some jambalaya or some red beans and rice, and have your group over, whether it's your family or your close group of friends or your neighbors out in the backyard, and plan something fun, and let WWOZ provide the entertainment.
I know in the past at Jazz Fest they've had the stages have been sponsored, and I'm curious if you're getting sponsors for this Jazz Festing in Place thing. And I want to talk to you when we come back from break about what a sponsor is going to get. Not exactly the laundry list of items, but why would someone sponsor it? What are they? Is it just because it's the right thing to do? Is it again, my listener is typically a business decision maker, and they're likely going, who would want to sponsor it if they've got listeners in Angola? What is the value of that? So let's get into that when we get back from break. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be back right after this.
What's Working with Cam Marston is brought to you by Stella Artois Beer. Stella Artois is a perfect beer for celebration. Nothing caps off a big sale, hitting your incentive goals, or a profitable quarter like a round of Stellas. Brewed first in 1708 as a special Christmas brew, today Stella is a gift for everyone to enjoy year-round. Stella Artois. Find it wherever fine beer is sold.
This is Cam Marston with Cajun Mike of E3 Termite and Pest Control. Cajun Mike, houses on pilings can have termites eat their way up inside the piling and enter the house. The homeowner never knows about it, but your company offers protection. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Cam. Basically, what we have designed is a program, and what we do is we will actually drill to the center of the piling and put a product in the center that will stop the termites from coming up into the home.
Stucco exteriors as well?
Correct.
How can people find you, Cajun Mike?
They can find me at e3pest.com.
That's the letter E, the number 3, pest.com.
Think about your home. What do you see? Do you just see 2 stories or the stories of your toddler's first steps? Now think about your car. Do you see an odometer reading or your kids reading in the back seat? Other insurance companies just see a house. They just see a car. But a State Farm agent sees what your home and your car really mean to you. So why not give them the protection they deserve?
You can reach me, State Farm agent Allison Horner, at AllisonHorner.com.
I'm Eric Cromwell. The death of a loved one is never easy. The law firm of Cromwell and Associates understands this and will help you with the complexity and legal experience needed to navigate probate court and estate administrations. Our experience has saved our clients buckets of money and years in time. Our law firm has locations in Mobile and Fairhope. Call 251-605-9075 or find Cromwell and Associates on Facebook.
Beth Arroyo Utterback is the general manager of the Mighty OZ. This is WWOZ out of New Orleans on the banks of the Mississippi River. It's a radio station with a very diverse playlist with extraordinarily charismatic and unique. They're not called disc jockeys anymore, Beth. What are they called these days? Show hosts.
On-air hosts.
On-air hosts.
Show hosts. Yeah, show hosts.
And I remember even Bob Dylan wrote something about these on-air hosts when he was in New Orleans recording an album and how much he enjoyed those hosts and how unique they were. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, indeed. We were part of Bob Dylan's book and actually more than one chapter, in fact, and he actually lived here for a while.
Yeah.
So he was a huge fan. And, Andy Warhol called us the greatest station in the universe.
Did he really?
So we've had quite, and John Goodman, who lives here, is a huge supporter. And he's also a volunteer here at WWOZ, as is Scott Bakula from NCIS New Orleans. They come in and do voiceovers for us all the time and help us, however we need to. So there's a real connection between all kinds of people and WWOZ. They just love it.
They do love it. And I'm curious, Beth, is it difficult to manage an organization with such a passionate fan base? Do you fear doing something wrong and turning these people off from all over the world? Tell me what that's like.
No, I mean, we're just who we are, and people either come along or they don't. We're fully aware that there are some people that don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, my God, I have to have my fix of New Orleans music. I mean, we definitely are for a particular taste, and, we really don't campaign. Either people get OZ or they don't. And really, we cater to the people that get OZ. And it's really very organic and it's really very natural. And, we don't come from a place of fear at all. We just come from a place of just wanting to share the music. That's why we say WWOZ, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, because OZ stands for, like the wonderful world of OZ, because the focus is on the music. It's not on the personalities or the people that's presenting the music. And that's one thing that has been true about OZ from the very first year, and it continues to be true now.
So we've got this upcoming Jazz Festing in place. Historically, there have been sponsors for the different stages. I'm curious if you've got, I would suspect that those sponsors back in the Jazz Fest days were very important to revenue. I'm not sure exactly how all it works. I'm curious if you've got sponsors coming up for Jazz Festing in place and what those sponsors see in the opportunity to mix with OZ.
We do. And, we have an interesting mix of people that support WWOZ. For one thing, we have several foundations, a lot of foundations that are grounded here, that are based here in New Orleans, that believe in the music and culture of New Orleans and want to fund those kinds of things. So we have several foundations here. But we also have foundations from around the country that support WWOZ because people on their board feel a connection to OZ as well. And then we have more corporate sponsors, people who have companies who might sell hot sauce or crawfish bread or things like that feel like, their vibe goes with what OZ is presenting. And then we have actually individuals and people that just love WWOZ, and they'll call in and become a drum roll sponsor just to have their name said during Jazz Festing in place. So just like their name or their kids' names or their names and their dogs. I mean, we've seen everything. People just so it's really a combination of companies and foundations and individuals that support WWOZ. And, I think that they do it for the love of WWOZ. There's no hard sales pitch ever. We don't sell a WWOZ by the numbers. That's just not where, as a community and public radio station, that we're coming from. And so people really have to get it and understand that our audience is really, very unique and very in tune with what's going on in and around New Orleans. And if this is something that they want to support, then we're happy to talk to them about how they become supporters. And really, we really just thank them on the air. Yeah. I mean, being a public and a community station, you really don't have anything like a call to action or things that, a commercial venture would have. They really have to do it for the love of the station. And at the same time, there are many people that do derive business from being a supporter of OZ because other people listen and they're like, oh, if you support OZ, we're going to support you. I mean, we hear that again and again.
They call that the halo effect is what I've heard it referred to as the halo effect on public radio.
Absolutely. And it's not a hard pitch because, you're not selling, you're not giving out phone numbers or things like that. It's a very kind of laid back approach and you're exactly right. The halo effect and just being associated with WWOZ. So that's why we're always delighted when somebody wants to be, part of our sponsorship, whether it's an individual or a foundation or a company, because let's face it, we can't live on love alone. We have to have money, we have to have money. But we have a robust membership base, and our membership base has grown, especially in the last year with more people staying home and working from home. They've appreciated the station even more and realized that it's a bigger part of their life. And so when we asked, them to become a member, more people have become a member.
Yeah.
So, we've been very fortunate the last year where a lot of nonprofits have really been hurting, and we are certainly in that position too, not having Jazz Fest, because one of our biggest sources of income is selling the brass passes to come to the WWOZ hospitality tent. But I'm really happy to report that individuals and foundations and companies have really stepped up to help us to fill that void and bridge that gap, and have really been tuning in more and more to OZ. So we're eternally grateful to all of our sponsors, big and small.
So I think the term was a treehouse sponsor in the fall, so that I could get Old Man River to say my name aloud over the radio during breakfast time, where OZ is always playing in the kitchen during breakfast time, so that my wife and kids could hear my name spoken by him over the air. And I looked at my wife and kids when he did it, and I just smiled, and they're like, Dad, I think you've got your priorities mixed up. I'm like, no, I don't. That was fantastic. That's the closest to heaven I've become.
It is so cool. And when when people donate, we like to thank during the membership drives. We like to thank as many people as we can. But, those Treehouse sponsors are at, that $1,000 level and higher. And a lot of times, you will be sponsor of the day, or you'll be like a drum roll sponsor during Jazz Festing in Place. And, we realize not everybody can support WWOZ at that amount, but we also know that there are people that can and that are more than willing to. And that really helps, helps to make WWOZ possible for everybody, whether they can afford to become a member or not. So it's just, that it's something that's important to them in their life, and they are happy to support the station, and we're happy to have them as a supporter.
Do you know, Beth, if you have more listeners in New Orleans or outside of New Orleans?
Well, it's hard to really tell exactly, but we have, I would kind of almost say like half and half. We have, a robust listenership in New Orleans, but really and truly, we have more people from around the United States, especially like if you're looking, to kind of, we have a lot of listeners in the Atlanta, Georgia area, a lot of New York, a lot of LA, a lot of the East Coast, and a lot of the Northwest. We have a lot of people up there too. We have a tremendous amount of listenership in Canada as well.
You had 5,000 unique IP addresses streaming Jazz Festing in Place last year, over 5,000 out of Canada.
And think about that. An IP address is just one device.
Right.
Okay, there could be 10 people sitting there listening to that. In fact, when there was somebody that owned a hotel in Italy last year during Jazz Festing in Place, and he actually had Jazz Festing in Place streaming all around the pool, and the people from Italy were all socially distanced. He sent pictures from his hotel, and there had to be like 30 people out at the hotel, all distanced out, listening to Jazz Festing in Place. And that was just one IP address.
943 in Italy. I'm looking at this list that you sent me. I think it's fascinating. I really do think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's just, I'll be honest with you, that even shocked me. And that was just like a snapshot of one day. That's not an aggregate number. That was just like a snapshot of one day of the IP addresses we were able to pick up. But, it doesn't surprise me, because we hear from people call us from all over the world, and people become members from all over the world. So it's not like, and now with email and social media, they also, if we do something, live or something online where they can respond, or something that's streaming live, they'll say, calling, like I'm, sending best wishes from Nice, France,
right.
Or, like greetings from Australia, or I'm up in the middle of the night in Israel, or, we're watching you from Canada. So we know that there's people all over the world that are listening and following us on social media as well.
138 from Iran. Let me ask you this. Do you give me, if you could, I'll put you on the spot here. This is not a question I would suspect you're typically asked. Tell me a story of something that really captures who the WWOZ is. Do you have something on the top of your mind that says, here's really the genuine, authentic story of who we are?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a great story. Okay, and I don't know if you're aware of this fabulous group that's come out of New Orleans called Tank and the Bangers.
Yes.
And they, won the Tiny Desk Award on NPR. The WWOZ was the very, very first station to play Tank's poetry and music, and she's never forgotten that. No matter how big they get, no matter how many album deals they get. And this is what OZ is about, okay? She came back to New Orleans after her very, very first tour in Europe. And I think that they were playing in London. I believe it was in London or outside of London. And she came back to the station, and she says, there was this man that had to be like 75 or 80 years old. And he wiggled his way to the very front of the stage, and he had on a really, really old WWOZ t-shirt. And she said, and after the show, I made it a point to grab him and bring him backstage and say, I love your t-shirt. And he says, I heard you play on WWOZ Live last year. And when I heard that you were coming to England, I took 3 trains and a bus to get here so that I could see you in person. Because when I heard you on WWOZ, I said, if I ever have a chance to see her in person, I want to see her in person.
That's awesome.
That's like one of my favorite WWOZ quintessential stories, is that we are connecting the musicians and the talent from New Orleans. Not only like Fats Domino and the people that were established and had passed on, Louis Armstrong, of course, all of them, but also the new talent, the younger talent, like Tank from Tank and the Bangers, or Amanda Shaw, or Trombone Shorty. We're connecting them with the people that are actually listening and wanting to see those people today, and exposing them to new songs, new music, new ideas, new poetry.
Beth Arroyo Utterback is the general manager of WWOZ 90.7 FM if you're in their broadcast range, but you can find them at wwoz.org. I'm a huge fan. We pray for them at dinner every night. Beth, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Pam, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the exposure, and thank you for listening and supporting WWOZ. And we hope everybody will check out Jazz Festing in Place.
We will. I certainly will. We'll be back after this final messages with final comments. You're listening to What's Working.
I'm David Nelson, brewmaster and owner of Braided River Brewing. We want beer that goes along no matter where the adventure takes us, and that doesn't make us choose between great beer and drinkability. We're drawn to the Delta and united by beer, because to us, the best way to celebrate the Delta is to slow down and savor the moments and the beer together. Come visit our tap room in downtown Mobile and ask for us at your favorite bar or restaurant. Visit online at braidedriverbrewing.com.
Hey, this is Cam Marston. It's this time of year that lots of companies go through their strategic planning process. I'm a fan of a strategic planning model pioneered by Silicon Valley companies called Zoom Out, Zoom In. And one of the key steps in this process is to evaluate your marketplace and determine what the natural headwinds are that might prevent you from getting to your goals in 10 years. 10 years is key. Then list those headwinds. Then list the tailwinds that will naturally push you towards your goals over the next 10 years. Finally, list 2 or 3 things that you can start in the next 4 weeks that will help you deal with the headwinds and maximize the tailwinds. And do these things that you list. Get started on them. This starts you on a trajectory to meet your 10-year goals. Want more help with your strategic planning? Find me online and give me a call.
At Spring Hill Toyota, it's just that easy. From our 3-day exchange to free car washes, the benefits of the Spring Hill Advantage make the choice easy to see. We make it easy to own. Every vehicle comes with Toyota Care, plus our no-cost maintenance plan with free tire rotations and oil changes for 4 years. Get peace of mind with free roadside assistance 24/7. And don't forget, it's easy to buy your car 100% online. Visit SpringHillToyota.com today. It's just that easy.
Hey, this is Cam. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're really enjoying the podcast. Do me a favor and search for Cam Marston on your social media outlets and like us or follow us or whatever is the right thing to do. Also, if you know others who'd benefit from the podcast, please forward it on to them and encourage them to listen. If you're so inclined, we'd love your rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Those ratings matter. Finally, don't be a stranger. Email me with your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, your show ideas, whatever. Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you very much for listening. Now, back to the show. I want to thank Beth Arroyo Utterback for spending her time with us. Her contagious excitement for Jazz Festing in Place. When this airs, we will have 1 weekend left of Jazz Fest. I hope that you can find WWOZ on your streaming services and put it on and enjoy it and get a sense of what it is that they're doing there. If you're not already a listener, I know this as I drive from Mobile into New Orleans, roughly around the Stennis Space Center. That's not easy to say. You can begin to pick up WWOZ coming out of New Orleans on your FM dial. Enjoy it. Folks, the show continues to evolve. We've got new advertisers currently. This would be their first show. We got new ones coming on. It's all very exciting, the growth of the show. And we are discussing events again. We hadn't done that in a while. There's a conversation being held with a couple of my advertisers about succession planning events, the bones, the necessities of succession planning. And that is always one of the topics that generates the most interest in the show, or one of the most requested topics for the show is succession planning, both internal family businesses and succession planning, as well as just normal businesses where people may be leaving and are trying to prepare the person who will replace them. So keep an ear out for that. It'll likely be in the fall, putting together an agenda. If you've got someone you think would love to tell their succession planning story, a father and son, or a father or mother and son, whatever, first to second generation family, as well as their story of their story of quote unquote a normal business as the business owner leaves and hands it off to the next person, I'd love to meet them. Testimonials and stories are the best ways to learn, and get me their names. You can email me Cam, C-A-M, at cammarston.com, and I'll track those people down. As we wrap up today, I want to thank all the good people that helped make this show. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank John Thompson. He's the show's producer. You're listening to What's Working. We'll have another show for you next week. Have a good week, everybody.